We're going to get into this next story here coming straight out of the UK. If you have not heard, doctors in the UK have been on strike. Now, this obviously affects the healthcare system in the UK. You have to remember that the UK has the NHS. They don't have Medicare for all. They have a national healthcare system, which is actually better than Medicare for all. So if you could imagine all of these doctors on strike, think about how that would affect this system. But why are they going on strike to begin with? Could you actually believe that doctors in the UK, these junior doctors, some of them were being paid less than fast food workers? It's true. Some of England's trainee doctors are paid less than fast food workers. They have had enough. It's crazy times we're living in. Tens and thousands of England's trainee doctors have gone on strike this week over pay. For many, hourly pay falls below that of some baristas and fast food workers. Junior doctors working in the country's National Health Service, NHS, walked out Tuesday, the first of 4 days of strikes demanding a 35% increase in annual salaries. The British Medical Association, the trade union and professional body for UK doctors, says junior doctors in England have suffered a 26% cut to their pay since 2008, once inflation is taken into account. So again, this is going back to 2008. That time, remember what happened then? That was the housing crisis that we had here in the United States. So they are long overdue for a pay raise. Junior doctors in Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales are on a different contract to those in England, though they have seen similar real-term cuts to their pay. They are not currently on strike. For too long, we have been undervalued. That's coming from Vivek, who is a co-chair of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee, told a crowd of striking doctors Tuesday, "We have reached the end of our tether. The government has pushed us to our limits." The UK Department for Health and Social Care, which sets doctors' pay, did not respond to CNN's requests for comment. Of course, they didn't. And you can see a picture here. Look at some of the signs. £14 an hour is not a fair wage for a junior doctor. Full pay restoration now. We are at our wits' end. Patients are sick. We are tired. Yeah, missing 26% of my salary, last seen since 2008. I'm surprised we haven't heard about this before now, but I do have a clip here that I want to play, and we have a couple of other clips to get into as well.
What do we want? Patient safety. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Patient safety. Who is it for? You.
In the midst of the festive season, Britain is at breaking point. Nurses, paramedics, postal, transport and border force workers have had enough and are going on strike as workers face rising inflation and stagnating wages, bringing the UK to a grinding halt just as Christmas approaches. Here outside St Mary's Hospital in London, these nurses have joined tens of thousands of other protesters up and down the country to demand better pay.
This is just a reminder. This is a reminder because remember we talked about the UK strikes last year. Remember it started with the nurses. When we talk about healthcare, there were teachers, there were railroad workers, all coming together to go on strike. So when it comes to the NHS system, they actually started with the nurses right before Christmas last year. And now you have the junior doctors also going on strike. So there are obviously some issues with the healthcare system in the UK. They need to pay these people. You have to understand, if you haven't worked in healthcare, some of these nurses, even here in the United States, they're expected to see 20, 25 patients in a day. They're only working so many hours. And so some of them look at this and they're like, look, I'm not getting paid enough for this. This is too much. It's happening all across it's not just here in the US. So the UK is having these issues as well, and people are tired of it. So it started with the nurses demanding higher wages.
We've seen so many nurses leave the profession due to being overworked and understaffed, and we're just not appreciated. I think that a pay increase, and we're just asking to match inflation. We're not asking for anything extra. will help us to retain staff and to get more staff into the profession, which will help us to care for the patients that we have at the moment.
But with so many essential services walking out at the same time, the British government is struggling to keep services running, with one junior health minister advising the public to avoid risky activity on strike days.
There will be disruption to service, and it is important that where people are planning any risky activity, I would strongly encourage them not to do so, because there will be disruption on the day.
The government has even resorted to drafting in the army to mitigate a walkout by paramedics and border force workers.
Okay, so that's a reminder of what happened in December, but the doctor strike that's still happening, we need to go more into that. So I want to go ahead and show you another clip from this as well, because this is all over the place and people need to pay attention to this. So again, we have another clip here that says junior doctor strikes. Being a doctor in the UK is not sustainable anymore. And I think we need to move this to maybe not. Oh, maybe I do want to start this from the beginning. I think I forgot to move this. Sorry, Eric. This one needs to start right about, we did the preconditions. Junior doctors are worth more. So listen to this here. This is an interview here. This was on Sky News. And this woman here to the right in the pink shirt, she was a junior doctor, and she's explaining to the host here like why they're on strike. And she's talking about the fact that, look, this is not sustainable anymore. We cannot continue with these wages. Listen to this.
So I believe, and the BMA believes, that all workers are paid, should be paid what they're worth. Now, that means that I believe in pay restoration. So no worker is worth less than they were before. And I believe that trade unions should be fighting for their members. The BMA is asking for 35% because we have lost 26% of our pay since 2008. It will take a 35% uplift to bring that back to net zero. And it's really important that we address this concern now, because we're already 9,000 doctors down in the UK, and that number is only set to increase, and the workforce crisis is only set to get worse.
So they have lost 9,000 doctors in the UK. This is why doctors are having to take on more patients than usual. So you just have to keep that in mind. Look, the UK has had a number of strikes within the past couple of months. You know, some of this started around the time when inflation started in reference to this war with Russia and Ukraine. These strikes have increased. They're continuing as we go on. But I think people need to understand, when the doctors go on strike, you really, really have a problem. It's not just transportation shutting down the railroad workers, but when doctors go on strike, that means that patients are not receiving care, right? So that affects the health of other people in that country as well. So you would think that one would listen to the doctors, because what are you supposed to do? You can't make a doctor's appointment. You would think that the administration here, they would listen and say, okay, let's pay them these back. These are basically back wages, going all the way back to 2008, that they owe them. And the fact that you have some of these junior doctors in the UK making less than fast food workers, I don't even understand how that was allowed to begin with. Crazy times, man, crazy times.
35%, a lot of people watching will say that feels like that's never going to happen. I mean, you say you're open to negotiation. How far are you prepared to negotiate?
So this is our opening offer, and the reason it's so high is because we've lost so much. This is it. You have to appreciate this is in the landscape of what's actually happening in the NHS at the moment. Staff are fleeing to other countries, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, because it's not sustainable to be a doctor here, and they're being offered better elsewhere. Now, we've got a 7.2 million long waiting list that the government need to address. They can't do this without doctors and healthcare workers, and it's imperative that they meet with us and negotiate in good faith.
Doctors from the UK are also moving to countries like Australia because Australia is giving them better benefits and better pay. And this is actually how countries lose good doctors. This is important for people to really wake up to. This is how you lose good doctors. This is how you lose good teachers. You lose them to other countries. There are American teachers here that move overseas to teach there because they're paid more and the benefits are better. In fact, when I lived in Germany, some of my teachers were American teachers, and that's what they did. There are people I know that have taught in South Korea, same thing, because South Korea pays for their housing and they get more salary and they live there as long as they can. And then they come back to the US and they are not in debt so much, so to speak. So this is how good talent walks out the door. If you want to retain good talent, you have to pay people what they are worth, and you have to make sure they have the benefits that they need to survive and to succeed, and the resources they need as well. When you shortcut, you lose good talent. When you lose good talent, you know who suffers? The residents in the UK. They're the ones who are going to suffer. That's what's happening right now.
The waiting list will get worse, though, as a result of strikes, won't they? You've called 4 days of strikes. Why have you chosen the particular dates that you have in April?
So we have chosen 4 dates, and this is an escalation of the 3 dates that we did previously in March. The reason that we've escalated is because the government refused to negotiate with us. And this is completely within the government's right to call off the strikes if they offer us pay restoration. Now, what we want them to do is come to the table, and we're willing to negotiate at any point. Our doors are open at any time to negotiate, regardless of whether strikes are on the table or not. And we want them to come and counter the offer that we've made so that we can actually make progress on this and come to a solution.
But I'm interested to know why you've chosen these particular dates, because they do come after a bank holiday weekend, Easter weekend, a 4-day weekend where there will be reduced junior doctor cover, then 4 days of strikes followed by another weekend. I mean, this is going to cause huge disruption to patients, isn't it?
That's the point. She says, we wonder why you chose these particular dates. It comes after Easter weekend. This is going to cause a disruption for patients. That's the point. The point is to cause a disruption. The point is not to tiptoe around the issue. It's to make a smash. It's to make a loud noise, a bang, to make an impact. That's the whole point. Why are you focused on that? She should be more focused on the fact that these people are owed back wages going back to 2008. That's what she should be focused on.
Why you've chosen those dates?
So what can happen during these periods of time is that healthcare trusts can provide extra staffing to bolster on either side of the dates to ensure that actually patient care is being delivered. And we've demonstrated through our 72-hour strike action that actually junior doctors being withdrawn from care doesn't cause safety issues. There wasn't a single derogation request during those 72 hours, which shows that actually this is safe and we are providing patients the care that they need, especially with emergency care, where expert clinicians, consultants and SAS doctors are stepping down. And we're very grateful for them for doing so to provide patient care.
However, 175,000 appointments and operations cancelled in the last strike, which was 3 days. So that reassurance about safety, obviously important, but it's not going to be much comfort to those people who risk having operations and appointments cancelled again in April.
Why is she blaming the doctors? Have you guys noticed a lot of these commentators are doing this? Instead of faulting the system in place, they blame the people who are on strike. They do the same thing with protesters. Instead of criticizing and attacking the system and attacking the corruption of the government, of them withholding funds from these doctors, they criticize the doctors who are on strike. See, it's not just US media that does this.
Of course, and I'm extremely sorry that it's come to this. I want the government to negotiate with us. The strikes don't have to go ahead. The government can come to the table and negotiate with us in good faith, and we can prevent this from happening. And I know that there are going to be thousands of patients waiting at home, waiting for knee replacements, waiting for essential operations in pain. And I really want to apologise to them because they have pushed us to this, the government have.
So the ball is in the government's court. They're the ones who need to come through at this point in time. You can't blame these doctors. What are they supposed to do? They're supposed to continue working with less, but producing more. I talked about good talent walking out the door. Here is a clip here of a UK doctor now working in Australia. And she gives her view on the junior doctor strike and how doctors in Australia are valued more and have better pay, terms, and conditions. Listen to what she says. This is what I was saying about good talent walking out the door and going somewhere else.
1 year. Was pay a big factor in that decision?
Well, working conditions was definitely a factor. I think pay is always a side issue, but it's very wrapped in with working conditions, which is hours and it's pay. Also here, the staffing is better, which allowed for better supervision and training. And we actually had access to study leave, access to exam leave, access to annual leave. We got married and we were given 5 weeks off work to go and do that. It was valued as part of our professional lives. And ultimately, I think having that wellness within your work culture means that your doctors are more rested. We felt valued when we were here, and you then provide better care when you're at work, and that improves the whole system and improves patient safety.
What happens when doctors are overworked? Are they at their best? Do they perform at their best if they're overworked? What happens if doctors don't get enough sleep and they have to go into surgery? Are they at their best? Rest is important. Breaks are important. Vacation is important. These things actually matter. You heard she said like she got married and they gave her automatically 5 weeks off. First of all, that don't even happen in this country. But they gave her 5 weeks off in Australia just because that's just a part of your life. So she's one of the examples, one of the doctors that left and went somewhere else. Let's go on. JB says lots of mistakes happen. That's what I was thinking too. Like, what happens when doctors are not well rested?
What is that now that you've been there a while and you've worked in both systems? What would you put the differences down to? Is it perhaps just the huge size of the NHS over here compared to what must be a much smaller health system in Australia?
That's probably part of it, but we still have very busy tertiary hospitals, busy district general hospitals. We still have huge issues with staffing rural hospitals in particular. I think the difference is that there's a culture of valuing the workforce. Doctors are paid more. They're also junior doctors have very regulated hours. They're capped at 80 hours a fortnight in some states, with any hours worked over that as overtime. And they are regarded as highly skilled and highly professional, trained people who are kind of worthy of having those higher salaries. And I think having purpose, being allowed to be good at your job at work, and having autonomy, gives professionals the motivation to do their job really well. And then I think being able to pay the bills is just the important thing. And I think the cost of living crisis in the UK is a big factor at the moment too.
Let's remember about the heating issue in the UK that we've been talking about, how people cannot afford to pay for heat and they have to go to these facilities called warm banks in the UK. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the UK is one of these countries that has had to deal with the effects of the Russia-Ukraine war. They are one of these countries that has been hit really hard by that. So has Germany. We talked about this earlier this morning on Rising, but like I told you, the sanctions that have been imposed on Russia are actually hurting U.S. allies more than it's actually hurting Russia. And the UK has been hit really hard. I talked to my friend in the UK who actually moved there over a year and a half ago. She said it's tough. It's really tough right now. So the point is that you have to pay these people and you have to treat them well. And when you pay workers well, you give people a living and a thriving wage. You give them the benefits that they deserve. Then people are happier to come to work. But when you overwork people, you use them, when you underpaid them, when you refuse to pay them back wages, those people don't want to stay there. And the people who have the means to leave will leave, just like she just did. That's what happens. So it's happening all across. People are starting to say, you know what? Maybe I need to get out. Maybe I need to leave here. There have been over 190,000 appointments that have been canceled in the UK because of the doctor strike. So the ball is in the government's court. They have two options. Give the people the back wages that they are owed so things can go back to the way that they were and people can make appointments again, or continue to suffer. Just a reality. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Boop, 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 boop. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Jim. Your crazy mama with your ball and chain and your old time religion is just a superstition. Rolling Stones. Interesting. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Nam. My sister is a resident in the US and she makes just over $45,000 a year, working 36-hour shifts regularly with 1 day off every 2 weeks. This is crazy. Why? This is why this goes back to this idea of hustle culture, which was promoted. It's been promoted in multiple forms, whether it's been Hollywood, whether it's been music. Hustle culture is not something to brag about. Thank you so much for the super chat, Roger. I can just hear the anti-Medicare for all peeps in the US now. Thank you for the super chat, Lorez. Instead of paying them, UK waste money on fake Corona. Fake King Corona. Interesting. Thank you for the super chat, Laugh. The UK government wants to privatize healthcare in the UK and make national healthcare impossible and change the UK into the US where healthcare is for the wealthy. I heard rumors about that. If that happens in the UK, I feel sorry for you guys. I really do. That should not happen. You don't want to struggle like people here do in reference to healthcare. Dana says, during my residency, I had to work 36+ hour shifts that have been stopped in most residency programs. Yikes. It's crazy, man. Crazy. Okay.